It's grounds for impeachment immediately and removal from office.
Let's turn now to our panel. CNN senior political commentator and former special assistant to President George W. Bush, Scott Jennings, and CNN senior political commentator and former Obama administration official, Van Jones. It's always great to have both of you here. Thanks for spending a Saturday evening with us for a few minutes. Scott, let's start first with you. I want to talk about the debate first. We saw the president at his rally today. Hitting some familiar notes there. What can he do on Tuesday? If you're advising him, what does he do to persuade any persuadable voters that might be left out there?
Well, he has to come to this debate prepared to prosecute the case that electing Kamala Harris is just having more of the same. I mean, that's his whole campaign here. If you're unhappy with Biden and you don't think what they've done on the economy is working for you, you can't leave the same people in charge. He has to be able to know the record, know what vote she has cast, know the things she has said, everything she has done on the Biden administration. He just has to know it cold. Now, in 2020, when he debated Biden, the first time around, not good. The second time around, he actually was very well prepared, and he was able to sort of be very specific in back and forth with Biden. So I know he can do it, but that's it. People have to turn off the TV thinking, yeah, I really do want change, and Trump is the candidate of change, not Harris.
And Van, it's interesting because meantime, Kamala Harris keeps saying, let's turn the page. We're not going back. She has positioned herself in a way as a change candidate. How does she convince people that she's the change that they're looking for? What does a win look like for her?
Well, I think, first of all, she walks in there representing maybe the broadest coalition of Americans in living memory. Everybody from AOC to now Dick Cheney is standing behind her.
And I do want to talk about that in a second, yes.
Yeah, but imagine walking in there, the leading lights of Donald Trump's party are with her. And I think she's got to be able to communicate, you can go into the crazy bin with this guy. I am presidential, I am ready, I am calm, I cannot be thrown off by this guy, and we are going to move forward. And I think the reality is people want to hang a bunch of stuff on her as if she were president of the United States. The vice president of the United States' only job is to watch to see if the president's alive this morning. Anything else she did beyond that is just kind of extra. And so she's now in a position where she can say that she is where she's going to be the commander in chief, and she will move in a different direction than Joe Biden.
Scott, before I move on to Dick Cheney, would you like to jump in there?
Well, I mean, normally that's the case. I mean, she's had a very consequential vice presidency. She's cast, I think, the most ever tie-breaking votes in the Senate of any vice president, including on Joe Biden's specific economic program, which drove the country into a massive inflationary spiral, which everyone is mad about. And on top of that, she, in her own words, last person in the room with Joe Biden when they made the disastrous decision on Afghanistan. So I think in some cases, you're right, Van, the vice president is relatively inconsequential. She has been a consequential vice president. I think the consequences have been bad. Trump has to be able to make that case at the debate.
Well, I see it differently, but you probably have other questions. So.
Yeah, well, I did want to get into Dick Cheney's endorsement. I want to play a clip of what Kamala Harris, the vice president, said about that endorsement today. Here's what she said.
People are exhausted about the division and the attempts to kind of divide us as Americans. And them stepping up to make this public statement, I think, is courageous, but also for people like the folks I was just talking with, it really reinforces for them that we love our country and we have more in common than what separates us.
And Scott, Vice President Dick Cheney, former Vice President Dick Cheney, in his endorsement said Trump can never be trusted with power again. Is he wrong?
Well, I think most Republicans would argue that the dangers of Donald Trump are far outstripped by the dangers of a Kamala Harris presidency when you consider just how far to the left she may want to take the country. I mean, I know she's changing all of her positions now, but no Republicans really believe that she's a moderate. They believe, what her initial instincts were when she got into politics. I mean, she's a California Democrat whose instincts were to side with Bernie Sanders on virtually every issue of the day and then run for president on that platform. And so that's what Republicans believe she is. And they think there are real consequences about the future of the country under a president who would go so far left, particularly if Democrats got or retained control of the United States Senate and eliminated the filibuster. this country, our government could take a sharp left turn in a hurry. And so Vice President Cheney, who I revere, I worked to elect this man vice president twice. I worked in the White House under Vice President Cheney. I revere him. I respect him. I think his statement was a little hyperbolic. And I also think most Republicans are going to disagree with him on the conclusion about what's more dangerous for the future, generally a center-right government or a very left-wing government.
And Van, go ahead.
I just see it very differently. If you are an undecided voter and you're trying to figure out what to do, this is a pretty massive signal. If Kamala Harris does stuff that you don't like, maybe your tax policy is too aggressive, you can vote her out in 4 years and fix it. If you put somebody in office who does not respect the rule of law, the Constitution, somebody who led an insurrection, somebody you may not be able to vote out in 4 years, that you can't fix that very easily. And so neither one of these candidates are perfect. But if you're in the middle trying to figure out, well, who's going to have the most survivable set of errors, Donald Trump's already proven that he will use violence, lies, and all kinds of stuff in a way that even a Dick Cheney, who is as far right, who makes Scott Jennings look like a Boy Scout, even Dick Cheney says that Kamala is a safer bet for America.
Van, going off that, endorsements don't always matter. Like, we make a big deal out of them because they're interesting to talk about, but they don't always tangibly move a needle. But in terms of the context of this one, and I think that's what you were just kind of getting at, the fact that it's Vice President Dick Cheney, if you went back in a time machine and told somebody that this would transpire, they would go, no, absolutely not, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, by itself, maybe matters a little bit, maybe it doesn't. But you're making now a case. You're putting together a bunch of Legos here to say there is a safe choice and there is a risky choice. There is a choice that is within the bounds of our system, and there's a choice that's outside the bound of our system. And when you have a convicted crook and an insurrectionist who lies every single day to the point that a Dick Cheney, John McCain's kid are jumping from the party that they love to not just say, I'm going to stay out of it, to aggressively make the case that we have to go with Kamala Harris. If you are in the middle and you don't know what to do, it should be a massive signal.
And Scott, I'm just thinking back to your days working for that administration. Some of those voters who really loved George W. Bush, loved Dick Cheney, don't see themselves reflected in the current Republican Party or with Donald Trump. Do you understand that? What do you say to them? And what do you think this sort of move, the case that they're building, as Van was just talking about, says to a voter like that?
There's no question that the parties have changed. I mean, since the George W. Bush days, you have had cohorts of Republicans that have migrated out, and some of them have migrated over the Democratic Party. It's also true that the Democratic Party has changed. You've had a lot of working class voters, union members, and others who've migrated over to the Republican Party. So you have had some, cross-pollination, some shifting coalitions. And what I would simply say is that Democrats have called Dick Cheney a war criminal for 20 years. And now all of a sudden they're clapping like seals to get his endorsement. This does not strike me as people who are interested in listening to your conservative viewpoints. They are hungry for power. They will take Dick Cheney's endorsement today. But believe you me, in their hearts, they wouldn't want to go out to dinner with Dick Cheney, let alone have him have any influence over the next government. And I doubt that he would.
Van, any last thoughts?
Well, I mean, the feeling is probably mutual. I mean, it gives you a sense of what a big threat Donald Trump is. You are correct. I don't think Dick Cheney will want to hang out with us and vice versa. But there will be one day when we stand together, and it will be in November, to stop Donald Trump from ruining America.
All right. Scott Jennings and Van Jones, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On Tuesday night, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump sharing the stage for that debate that America is waiting for. You can follow CNN for complete coverage and exclusive analysis before